Well, good Thursday morning, friends. Mark Holmes here with my buddy Cowboy Joe Boo, as well as Joe Bear in the house. And as always, I want to thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report. Without you guys, as well as you ladies, you know that this literally does not work. So let's get open for business and let's wake up the football gods. Boy, Jerry Jones has a lot to say at the Senior Bowl. Oh, my goodness. Let me first say thank you, ladies, last night. We ended up doing a Zoom call with some of the channel lady members from like Gina Thorne and Tammy and Kathy Dugan and Ava and Amanda. I can't remember. Let's see. Sheila Neal, Sheila Brazil. I apologize. Oh, Joanne Gonzalez. It was great to put a face to all of you individuals, and this is something that we're probably going to be doing more of, Zoom calls where we can kind of get to know each other, talk about things in life and prospects of the Cowboys and things like that. So definitely be looking ahead, you channel members, for some more stuff that we're going to be doing. So we have the Senior Bowl here this weekend, where we're going to be hopefully finding some future stars for the Dallas Cowboys that will help us to get over this 26-year drought that we've had with the Super Bowl. Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones. Not one to mince words. You know Jerry Jones. He wants some.
I think that's a part of leadership, is to have some of the guys that have gone before that have been disappointed to share it with everybody involved. For me, it's a reminder. I, too, have been here 23 years, and it is a reminder. I've been here when it was glory hole days, and I've been here when it wasn't. And so having said that, I want me some glory hole.
I want me some glory holes. Yeah, we definitely
So
want
I have
some
that
glory
perspective.
hole days for the Dallas Cowboys again. But Jerry Jones admits, and this is a theme that we have going on here, I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to prepare us for losing players that we love, because we as Cowboy fans fall in love with our players. And it seems like one of the people that seems to be constantly in the target zone is Amari Cooper. Now, the Cowboys are $21 million over the cap. What's being reported is the restructure of Dak Prescott's contract is $16 million of relief. If you take $16 million from the $32 million hit we were going to have, that means Dak Prescott's contract is costing $16 million this year, which case it was $17 million last year. And so I don't want to hear any more of this bullshit. Well, if they hadn't signed Dak Prescott to a long-term deal, paid him all that money, $75 million, it's bullshit. It doesn't matter. The only number that matters is the cap number. Jerry Jones, you think that $140 million is anything to him? That's chump change. The only thing that matters is how big is your cap hit to the team. And Dax will be about $16 million, which is far less than DeMarcus Lawrence, Amari Cooper, hell, Tyron Smith, Zach Martin. He's down there almost with Lyle Collins. So I don't want to hear this stuff that, you overpaid the quarterback. It's bullshit. You've been brainwashed by Skip Bayless and $75 million. That's not what they got on the cap. It's not. But be that as it may. But Jerry Jones says we're going to have a hard time for us keeping some of the talent that we have going on the field next season. In other words, we're preparing you that some fans that some of those players that you like are not going to be here. And that's a reality that teams have. In some cases, sometimes we've had where we've lost players that were key the year before and have been better by subtraction. I'm not saying that that's always the case, but you think about 2013 where we lost DeMarcus Ware. They cut him. Jason Hatcher signed a deal with the Washington football team after having 11 sacks, and Sean Lee ended up tearing up his knee. You didn't expect a defense that was 31st to go to 19th, but yet they did without those three players. Could that happen? Maybe. Maybe we end up being worse. Who knows? That's the great thing about football, is the great unknowns until you heard about the Miami Dolphins situation, which still bugs me. But here's the real thing that is interesting, and this feels like validation of something I said last week. I said last week, Jerry Jones has now covered all bases. Keeps Mike McCarthy. You keep the coaching staff that's there. He goes in the season, basically, I've got to prove it to keep my job. I then said, by getting Dan Quinn, you have the coach on your staff that if Mike McCarthy, if it starts off poor, or you just kind of feel like I need a change, you have a guy that you feel confident that can be your head coach. And you can fire Mike McCarthy in the middle of the season. Because then Dan Quinn, who has actually coached the game for you while Mike McCarthy was dealing with COVID. So you got the coach in waiting right here. You're already paying him like a head coach. In which case, if you have questions of Dan Quinn being the head coach because of what happened in Atlanta, I said, you've got half a season or however long it is when you fire Mike McCarthy to check him out and see if he's the guy. If he's not the guy, if nobody has snagged up Sean Payton, you can try and get Sean Payton. So you literally have 3 possibilities of coaching sitting there. Nobody else has that. And that was my theory on this. And Jerry Jones kind of confirmed this. So Jerry and crew, they've got their suite at the Senior Bowl, and they're there out checking out the prospects. Here's what Jerry was saying. Shout out to Jory Epstein from USA Today, who asked him these questions. Great interview. She asked him, could Dan Quinn be a potential future head coach for the Cowboys? Well, he's certainly qualified, Jones said Wednesday. He's very qualified. Yes, I would consider. If I didn't have a coach, I'd be interviewing him for a coach. As owner and general manager, Jones calls the shots of his position, and he was delighted by what he called a major coup in retaining Quinn's interview for head coach in Vegas in January, but ultimately returned to the Cowboys. The Cowboys' defense improved, of course, from 28th in points to 7th this season. I mean, 21 points. It's amazing. The overperforming unit impressed Jones, but he wanted to keep Quinn in addition rather than in place of McCarthy. The facts are nobody worked harder to keep Dan Quinn here than Mike, Jones said. That's the plan. That's the plan, pure and simple. We got some people say, well, what do you have a rationale behind that? The rationale was he was highly competitive way. I wanted them to be thinking that we were talking to a guy who could be a head coach for the Cowboys. I wanted the allure to be friendly to Dan staying and turning down head coaching jobs. That's my logic, and I put my logic with anybody's. Jones' logic became relatively winding when he asked whether Quinn had head coaching offers in hand. He says he believes he has. He wouldn't, say one way or the other. If he did, he believes he did. So we don't know if anybody offered him a head coaching job or not. So we don't know. Right now, it's only Minnesota that hasn't filled their job. I think it's only Minnesota. So we don't know if he actually had an offer or not. But here's the thing. If you think about how the Cowboys have been in the past, and I always say study the past because it'll tell you where you're going in the future. When you think about the dynamic of Wade Phillips and Jason Garrett, how Jason Garrett I still believe, backstabbed Wade Phillips into becoming the head coach. We kind of thought that was going to be the Kellen Moore into Mike McCarthy. And my video last night that I forgot to make public, I didn't do that till this morning. I kind of feel like there's a rift between Kellen Moore and Mike McCarthy, where Mike McCarthy has kind of kept him there at bay and let him sink or swim on his own, letting him call the plays and being the fall guy. Because when you hear Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones talking about Amari Cooper, they talk about scheme. Well, if you're talking about scheme, basically Mike McCarthy is saying, look over there. That's Kellen Moore, the guy you wanted to keep and keep your system. Don't blame me. So you kind of see right now Kellen Moore taking the bullets there and Mike McCarthy not trying to help save him. Because I believe Mike McCarthy wants to say bye to Kellen Moore and I'm now calling the offense, and we're going to change to the West Coast. That's what I believe. But now, here's where you got to look. It's almost like you got a circular firing squad here in Dallas, where you got to keep looking. You got to sleep with both eyes open, because now you've got Dan Quinn that Jerry Jones has already now stated could be head coach for the Cowboys. That if I didn't have a coach, I certainly would interview him. I don't know how any other way you can put it, but that's saying Dan Quinn is my coach in waiting. Mike McCarthy, don't fuck up. That's the bottom line. Mike McCarthy, don't mess up. I've got the guy right here, right now that I trust. And you can almost look at the situation with Dan Quinn, because the Cowboys, when they hired him, it seemed like Dan Quinn got his way on the type of players that he wanted to get, because the Dallas Cowboys changed the type of personnel that they got because I think of the influence of Dan Quinn. I don't know that Mike Nolan had that kind of influence or anybody else, because usually the Cowboys micromanage every aspect of everything. I think Dan Quinn is trusted right now more than Mike McCarthy is. That's just my personal take. I could be 100% wrong. Who knows? Also, too, we have to give a shout out to Dan Ripwell. Dan, oh my God, I'm having a brain fart. Who's been with the Cowboys since the Jerry Jones era. I cannot pronounce his name. Boy, we ended up talking with him about the Pro Football Hall of Fame and getting the passes that we had and things. But he is actually retiring. He is stepping away from the Dallas Cowboys now as well. So shout out to him, and a great career, and we'll see where his career leads him to. And finally, we still have the cesspool that is the Miami Dolphins, Brian Flores situation that I think could actually have ramifications in the NFL. Jerry Jones went on yesterday and was basically saying that, we have to do better with the Rooney Rule, and we need to look into it more than what has been happening. I don't know, with Jerry Jones saying something like that, if that's going to actually help the Dallas Cowboys in the future with the referees and things like that, because it's in a way kind of throwing the NFL and the other owners under the bus. And it seems like whenever there's an issue with the Cowboys, you don't seem to get any quarter. You don't get any break. And the more waves you kind of make, it seems like the worse it may get. So we'll see where all this goes. But right now, this thing seems to be snowballing more and more, as now you're kind of getting hints that other coaches are saying, yeah, I was kind of given the shaft, and yeah, I was kind of encouraged to lose games. And now we're talking about the integrity of the NFL. If the NFL literally did months and months of investigations over a deflated football, then you need to do investigations when it comes to the idea that teams are throwing games. So let's listen to the latest here. This is the Miami Dolphins owner responding to Brian Flores' allegations.
Released this statement, quote, "With regards to the allegations being made by Brian Flores, I'm a man of honor and integrity and cannot let them stand without responding. I take great personal exception to these malicious attacks, and the truth must be known. His allegations are false, malicious, and defamatory. We understand there were media reports stating that the NFL intends to investigate his claims, and we will cooperate fully. I welcome that investigation, and I'm eager to defend my personal integrity and the integrity and values of the entire Miami Dolphins organization from these baseless, unfair, and disparaging claims." So as I bring the rest of the group back in here, Graziano, let me start with you first here, because when the lawsuit first became public knowledge, the league's initial response was to say that it was without merit. But now it appears, with regard to that, they were talking about the hiring practices piece of the lawsuit, if you will, but they are investigating this part. Do we have that right?
The league will look into this, yes. From what I was told last night by sources close to this, the league will investigate to the extent that they can. It's the same with any kind of NFL investigation. All rests on the cooperation they get, right? Were there witnesses that heard Stephen Ross say this to Brian Flores? Are there text message exchange or email exchanges that can prove this? If not, there's just really not a lot for the league to go on. It's one man's word against the others. But if they do find some evidence to support Brian Flores' claims, then it's a very serious charge that the league will have to deal with in a very serious way.
Absolutely. And for whatever it is worth, the two lawyers who were here with Brian Flores yesterday said they do have corroborating evidence that this offer was made. They did not tell us what that evidence was. So we'll wait and see if and when something like that comes to light. Okay. So this obviously is something that has everyone's attention for all of the obvious reasons. Let's start by dealing in the portion about the $100,000 per loss, and then we'll work our way to the hiring practices piece of the conversation. But, Bart, I'll give you the floor first on that.
I mean, I think somebody's just a liar, right? This is one man's word against the other. But, you know, to believe that this is something that isn't common practice, I mean, would be absurd as well. Understanding that, you know, teams have done this for years. That's why, you know, the NFL recognized this. And the reason why you can see that they recognize this is because they start making conference games at the end of the schedule so you can avoid the anti-taking laws. You know, but the thing is, you know, and the problem is when you have owners that's not from, you know, the sport and, you know, they're fans, they don't understand how hard it takes for a guy to work to get to that level. And, you know, usually what they used to do is general managers used to put guys on IRs. That's how you can always tell when a team was tanking. They would take players that didn't have real injuries and they would put them on IR for the year. So this is something that's common practice, but it's absurd that you think that you can buy somebody by offering them allegedly $100,000. I think that's the offensive part about it. And we have a responsibility also to our gambling partners to make sure that everything is done in good faith.
To be clear, I understand what you're saying. What you're saying is there are ways to not make organizationally not make every effort to win. That do not involve on game day itself the coaches and the players not trying.
You can't involve the coaches. You can't involve the coaches. Usually, what general managers used to do is put guys on IR, and they had bogus injuries that they would play through.
Right, and they trade away players before the season begins for draft picks. There were ways of doing that without what we're talking about here. Damian Woody, go ahead.
Yeah, Greeny, this is just this is the craziest thing I've heard. Because I mean, think about it. When you're talking about coaches and tanking games, what coach in their right mind would want to do something like this? Ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what's on your resume. Okay, you are what your record says you are. So, you know, if these allegations are true, why in the world would Brian Flores want to go along with something like that?
You
and
become
the fact
the fall
that,
guy.
you know, an owner would throw $100,000 per game you lost in his face. I mean, that just disrespects the integrity of Brian Flores as a coach. I mean, listen, no coaches, players, we don't give a damn about a draft pick. Like, they can't help us now. Okay, we're trying to win games now. So, again, if the allegations are true, they're just damned in Stephen Ross. And I think if they are found to be true, he should be the franchise should be taken away from him.
Thank you.
I did hear a lot of that sort of conversation yesterday. Now, Mike T., you were the general manager of the Miami Dolphins, when Stephen Ross was the owner, so you know him in a way that the rest of us do not. What is your perspective on all of this?
Here we go.
Yeah, when I worked for Steve for 5 years, he was extraordinarily competitive, gave us all the resources to win. So, obviously, I was not there with Coach Flores, so I can't comment on what happened between those two gentlemen. But I can tell you my experiences were he gave us every resource to win and be successful on the field.
Okay, I get it. I understand. And you're not there. We don't know if anyone else was in the room where it happened. Again, the lawyer said there is corroborating evidence. We'll wait and see if and what that is. That said, the root of this lawsuit is about the hiring practices in the National Football League and Brian Flores' belief, and he's certainly not the only one, that those practices are flawed and they are skewed in a way that is unfair to black coaches and other coaches of color. With regard to that part of the conversation, D. Wood, as we see this continue to evolve and the lawsuit now that might make a big change here, we'll see. What are your thoughts today?
Honestly, Greeny, you know, it's exhausting, to be honest with you. It's exhausting. We have these type of issues come up all the time, and we have the conversation with, black players, black coaches, what needs to be done. And quite honestly, there's nothing that we can say that's going to change anything. Really, there's nothing that we can say that will change anything. Hopefully, you would think that this lawsuit would shed some light, some transparency on the actual hiring process. That would be my hope. But ultimately, Greeny, what this really comes down to is this. We don't need to ask the black players or coaches because we know where they stand at, okay? We don't need to ask Roger Goodell because Roger Goodell works for the owners. He is a pawn. We don't need to ask Roger Goodell. Everything needs to be pointed to the owners. Like these questions can only be answered by the guys who are in power. We can sit here all day and talk about these issues, and there are plenty of them. But if we want to get to the root cause and why these things continue to happen, where there's only one black coach in the National Football League with 70% of the players being African American, that's a damn shame. And we need to point it to one place and one place only, to the owners who control the situation.
Amen.
Thank you for watching ESPN.
All right, so that's where we are with that situation. Stephen Ross says it's bullshit. I would never do something like that, but I wouldn't exactly expect him to come out and say, oh, yeah, hell, I offered him $100,000. Thought that was a good deal. That's not what would happen. We all know that that's not going to happen. But if you are Mike McCarthy, boy, you got to look over both of your shoulders right now. I'm Mark Holmes, and, well, it's time for me to get to work in the workshop, and I will catch you later.
Mark Holmes here, and as always, I want to thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report.
You did one hell of a job, and the only thing else I got to say is,